Okay, well, welcome Wednesday afternoon. Today's session is Access to Capital. We have some amazing guests today who are going to talk about their programs. We're going to talk about, we're going to hear from Vicky Gonzalez from the Neighborhood Development Center, Electra Skrzydlewski from the Minnesota Consortium of Community Developers, and Roderick McCulloch from Shared Capital Cooperative. We'll talk a little bit about the local fund. There will be plenty of time for questions. Right now, we'd love to hear who's in the room with us. If you want to share your name, preferred pronouns, and any particular questions you have about cooperatives, business planning, or capital, you can start putting those in the chat. We'll be hearing from these guys in a minute. But as questions come up, you can feel free to put them in the chat. My colleagues will be monitoring the chat. And if there's something we want to bring up into the conversation, we can do that. And like I mentioned, we'll also have a Q&A session at the end. My name is Patty Biafra. I am the director of the Worker Ownership Center at Nexus. Where am I? We're a team of consultants that support Black, Indigenous communities in developing real estate, investment cooperatives, and worker-owned cooperatives. And our mission is to build wealth through democratically run enterprises that broadly share economic and social benefits. This is our team. So you may have seen us around: Benjamin Tsai, Christina Nicholson, Deanna Siegel Garcia, and I just introduced myself. This webinar is part of a series. So this is part 6, Access to Capital. We've talked about business planning basics, creating your cooperative. We had David Sensman join us for that. We did some business financial basics. We talked about cooperative conversions. We talked about projections, sources, and uses. And our last webinar is next week, which will go in depth into the eligibility requirements of the local fund and how to apply for the local fund. Stop sharing for a second. So our speakers today: Vicky Gonzalez is a loan officer and business advisor with the Neighborhood Development Center. She has over 15 years of experience in business development and business banking, and she thrives in helping businesses grow and navigate their financial journey. Beyond that, she's also a mentor to new entrepreneurs. We have Electra Skrzydlewski. She's the director of the Shared Ownership at the Minnesota Consortium of Community Developers, where she leads shared ownership programming and lending. In this role, she works with BIPOC and low-wealth communities to achieve collective self-determination, advance racial justice and economic democracy, and foster sustainable development. She's a seasoned strategist and developer adept at translating complex concepts into actionable plans. And Roderick McCulloch became a member of Shared Capital, of the Shared Capital team in 2022. And as part of the lending team, he's the primary loan officer to service all food co-op loans and applications. Prior to his time at Shared Capital Cooperative, he spent almost a decade in the food co-op sector and almost another decade working in the hospitality industry with small independent food businesses. So we'll hear from Vicky first. Let me go to slideshow. Beautiful pictures, beautiful people. And I'll pass it off to Vicky, and you can just let me know when you want me to go to the next slide.
Perfect. All right. I'll introduce myself again. Vicky Gonzalez, pronouns she, her. Loan officer here at NDC. And so who we are here at NDC, we're a nonprofit organization, community-based, that we provide accessible, reasonable financing to entrepreneurs, especially BIPOC entrepreneurs that traditional bankings can't offer. How to finance your business. If you want to go to the next slide. So we here at NDC focus on a 4-pillar model. This 4-pillar model has been around for over 30 years. We focus on training, lending, business services, technical assistance, and then incubator space. So a lot of our entrepreneurs, when they come to us in the ideation stage or in the business idea, they can either pick going through a training, which is offered 2 times per year in the spring and the fall. It's about a 12 to 15 week cohort. Once you have graduated from that program, you will be leaving with a business plan. That is very essential and very important to be able to move to the next step, which would be lending. A lot of our lending you have to have, especially startup businesses, have to have a business plan in place. It does not have to be a 40-page business plan, but it does have to be about 1 to 3 pages with a lot of real good, accurate information and projections. And then we help you with the underwriting process and getting you through for lending. With that being said, then we do have the business services. That is in addition to being approved for a loan, then that is throughout the term of the loan, and we provide technical assistance. We also offer different components in that. We have marketing, we have accounting, that really focuses on being able to help entrepreneurs continue growing. We also are commercial real estate. We own commercial real estate, which includes the incubator space. One of our biggest ones is NGM, Midtown Global Market. We're always looking for new tenants to go in there. There is an application process, but we always are looking at filling up spots. We also have one located in St. Paul that's really designed for hair salons. So people looking for just condominium space for setting up their salon. So if you want to go to the next slide. Kind of went over this, but yes, we have the 2-year class. We have 2 classes per year in the spring and the fall. They are taught in different languages, English, Spanish, Somali, Hmong, and Ormon. There is a fee that we determine on depending on income for that. Like I said, it's a 12 to 15 week. And then you do have the one-on-one training with a trainer. Next slide. And then our business lending, and that's where I hold hard to. We help individuals or entrepreneurs with loans anywhere from $1,000 up to $250. We do participate as we are CDFI and SBA preferred lender. We do partner with a lot of community banks to help with gap financing if that amount is larger than $250, or sometimes if it's in conjunction, it doesn't have to be $250, but it can be, if it's 1.2 million, we can do gap financing for you as well too. Next slide. And then the technical assistance really breaks it down on the different technical assistance that we offer. We have experts in different fields that provide this really in-depth technical assistance. And what we love about it is that we really help clients throughout that whole process, because sometimes clients will be really, really good at one area, but might need marketing or might need accounting. So we really focus on helping you succeed overall. Next slide. And then our incubator space, like I said, those are the commercial properties that NDC owns. And so we're always excited about looking for new tenants in our spaces. Next slide. You can go to the next slide. And then preparation is key. I know that one of the questions was what makes a good client or a good application is being ready, being prepared, having all your information ready. We do have a loan readiness packet that we provide to all of our entrepreneurs that really breaks it down, that checklist of everything that you would need. With that being said, you can always reach out to have more than just the initial consultation. We want to make sure that We're with the client every step of the way, and can meet them where they're at as well. Next slide. Things to consider about your project. You know, this is really important to kind of go through this, to get familiar to what we would be looking at for NDC. So that really helps. It really breaks it down. Next slide. And then the different types of capital that you could use. Savings, you know, friends and family, investors, crowdfunding, grants, factoring, credit card loans and lines of credit. Next slide. You can go another one. I think that was the same thing. One more. And then here at NDC, we are character-based lending. So we don't just go off of credit. Even though our minimum credit requirement is 520, we are really based on character-based lending. Will the client be able to repay that loan? You know, what is their character? Do they understand the type of business and the elements needed to start or to move forward if you are an existing? Next slide. And then, like I mentioned here, you know, we come in as CDFI if you can't go to traditional banking or traditional financing. We are here to help with that. With that being said, I do love partnering and collaborating with community banks, because at the end of the day, we want to graduate you to be bankable and to go to a banking partner. Next slide. And then I'll open it up for questions. I don't know if that was okay, Patty, you just let me know.
That was great. Yeah. If we have any questions in the chat, we can answer those now. I think, you know, one of the things that you highlighted was wanting to be with borrowers throughout the whole step. So if you want to talk a little bit about, you know, how you build that relationship and how you kind of take your clients through that process.
Yeah. So it depends on where each client is at. You know, if, like I said, one of the requirements is they have to have a business plan. So once they've completed that business training, that entrepreneur training, then we help them with making sure that the business plan is accurate and we can continue moving forward. If there's things that may need tweaking or additional training or resources, we also offer that. We do offer 7 different trainings, and then we also offer 8 different loan products to fit each client where they're at or what they might need. Meaning, you know, some clients might just need $1,000 to perhaps get a POS system to get started. So that's what that relationship piece is so important. And just that communication, emailing, calling, you know, meeting them at their site as well. So yeah.
You also mentioned that you work with clients that have just started. How early, and assume, I mean, you mentioned you have 8 different loan products. So how early do you start with your clients, or how early can you start with your clients if they've just launched a business?
Yeah, so as long as they have their business plan and it's been approved by the trainer then is with them for an additional 30 hours. And then we work together as a group. So the trainer, the loan officer, and the client, just to make sure that we understand the need and where they're wanting to transition to move forward for a loan. And not everybody needs a loan. There might be things that maybe they just need resources or whatnot. So that's how that kind of works.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Vicky.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
So I'll pass it to you, Electra.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Vicky. It's always a pleasure to see you. My name is Electra Skrzydlewski, and I'm with MCCD, the Minnesota Consortium of Community Developers. And you can go ahead into the next slide. I'll tell you a little bit about who we are. We are celebrating our 36th anniversary this year as a statewide association of nonprofit community developers. That includes CDFIs, nonprofit affordable housing development organizations, and small business support organizations. Both NDC and Nexus community partners are among our membership. So we're really, really glad to be a part of today's conversations with one of our very close lending partners, Shared Capital. So it's great to be here with everyone. As a consortium, we work together to kind of expand the scope of what economic prosperity can bring to life and to really get into community to help advance racial and economic justice by investing and stewarding different types of community development resources. Really at the heart of the work that we do with consortium members and community partners is that, we maintain a shared belief that communities know what they need and that they really deserve the tools and capital instruments to help build those things. So we'll talk a little bit today about how MCCD engages in that work. Let's go ahead. All right. So similar to NDC, MCCD operates its work kind of across a wide range of activities. As both consortium and an individual community development financial institution, our work kind of begins with small business development, where we work in collaboration with government partners and other community-based organizations, whether those are nonprofit organizations, kind of constituency serving organizations, other lenders, or entrepreneurial ecosystem partners. We're working together to support emerging entrepreneurs, small businesses, and community groups that are trying to do new things. And we do this through offering small business team coaching, advisory services, and include technical assistance on some more of the particular aspects of growing and starting businesses, and really connecting them with resources that help them launch, grow, convert, or consider converting to shared ownership models, and really to sustain their enterprises over time. So whether someone is just starting out, or they're navigating a tough spot for their business, or considering a transition or what's next for them, we're here to help guide them every step of the way. As a CDFI, MCCD provides flexible and affordable capital to help entrepreneurs and community-based businesses kind of across the spectrum of ownership models really overcome those systemic barriers that Vicky named earlier on their pathway to making their dreams come to life. Our loan projects range, we'll get into that in just a moment, but essentially we want to make sure that borrowers have the right kind of capital for their project. So for worker co-ops, real estate investment cooperatives, and commercial community land trusts, access to the right kind of capital can really be make or break. That's why we work closely with our borrowers and with our lending partners to structure financing that meets their needs, sets them up for success, and really is appropriate for the conditions that they're in. So whether that's financing a buyout, equipment, working capital, we're really here to make sure that loan is a product that makes sense. Additionally, MCCD's work was kind of started around this kind of third pillar for policy and advocacy. As a consortium, we are bringing together our members to not only really keep their fingers on the pulse of what's going on in the community development field, but we know that for shared ownership models to thrive, they need a strong and hospitable enabling environment. And that means that the rules, the funding, the infrastructure needs to support community-led solutions. So that's a part of why we work really closely alongside with our members to identify gaps in existing programs, to help draft and advance policies and investments that make these business models more possible in community, and to really advance a wide range of solutions that create equitable outcomes for communities, particularly those that have been left behind. So we actively engage lawmakers and public officials to expand eligibility for cooperatives and other types of shared ownership models. So you'll see us kind of here, there, and everywhere, whether it's on the Capitol or in municipal buildings, or participating in community listening sessions to really help make sure that the voices of community are heard and elevated. And our field building work is really an acknowledgement that no single organization can do this work alone. So building an inclusive and equitable economy really does require a high and coordinated degree of collaboration, which is why it's so wonderful to see examples like this webinar where we're all together having really important conversations. So the field as a whole exists to really kind of address those structural gaps, whether it's on the housing side or the small business side, fostering partnerships and expanding access to information, to resources, to spheres of influence and kind of social networks through community really makes a world of difference. So we have peer learning cohorts, we engage in cross-sector initiatives, co-develop tools with partners. We really want to grow the capacity of the field as a whole. Go ahead to the next one. All right. So MCCD has really two kind of flagship technical assistance programs. And this slide kind of names some of the features in them. For those of you who have been following MCCD small business work for a minute, or it may be new to you, Open to Business is a program that has been a part of MCCD's work since we became a CDFI in 2011. And then our shared ownership work is really an expansion of the supports across the ownership spectrum. So we're going to kind of zoom in a little bit on that support. So whether an individual or community group is at the idea stage and needs some support with exploring feasibility, thinking through some of those big business succession and transition questions, they're trying to stabilize or they're trying to grow, we really get into relationship with our clients to offer that one-on-one and group-based advising. And the turn of phrase that you'll hear quite a lot is that it really meets you where you are. I mean, I think that's the biggest distinction about how community development finance organizations work differently than some conventional lenders. So this support can span the gamut of governance, education, group decision-making, cooperative development on the business development aspect side, talking through and connecting with you with other professionals that work on employee ownership transitions, or putting you into a relationship with other community-based models of shared ownership like commercial land trusts and some of the wonderful housing work that's happening in communities so that folks can learn together, can grow together, and get some of their questions answered by folks that have been in their shoes. So thanks to our partnerships with counties, cities, state agencies, including the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development, the support that we provide to clients is no cost. We also provide workshops, whether those are topical workshops or regular standing lending information sessions. We do webinars and engage in peer learning opportunities in person and virtually. And like NDC, we offer language support in English, Spanish, Somali, and Hmong, so that folks kind of wherever their needs lie can interact with our team, and we can make sure that we're able to kind of stay connected and move along a common course. So our advising is designed to be objective, is that we know that you have your own goals, that you have your own experiences and realities. And the work that we do is really grounded in those real life challenges that you're meeting every day, especially if you're navigating ownership transitions that can be emotionally charged, can take a little bit longer than some other types of transactions or relationships in a business. And for folks that are navigating shared ownership for the very first time, there can be a lot to learn. So our assistance doesn't necessarily have any pre-qualifications. Essentially, if you fit within the scope of the types of businesses and entrepreneurs that we work with, again, from micro enterprise all the way through various shared ownership models, we do have a member in our consortium who works exclusively with nonprofits. We typically don't unless your commercial community land trust model is incorporated as a nonprofit. But we don't typically work with developers that are interested in investment-only real estate acquisition. Typically, it's owner-occupied unless it is a real estate investment cooperative, in which case it has a slightly different purpose. So when it comes to lending and kind of how we think about the relationship, it really is on a client pace set. I'll rephrase that. Clients set the pace for the nature of how the relationship unfolds in conversation with us about what it is that they're trying to accomplish, in order to kind of get a global picture about where somebody is and kind of turn over some of the stones that reveal both opportunities and sometimes pain points. It doesn't really, take the same approach as going to a conventional bank. So whether it's a capital conversation or figuring out how it is that you're going to get the resources to make your project go, or you need some support and you're not really sure how to hold your group together, those are areas where sometimes more time is needed. But we'll do our best to be very realistic and to outline what we believe based on some of those initial conversations and that intake assessment. What is a kind of reality in terms of timeline? So really our goal is to get done what it is that our clients want to see happen and be a part of enabling wealth building in all of its forms and community. So not just in spite of those barriers, but in ways that challenge them and transform them and challenge and transform the people that are involved. Let's go ahead to the next one. So we won't go through this in a ton of detail, but this gives you kind of an at-a-glance way to understand kind of some of the scope of the services that we provide. A little envious of the fabulous slide that Vicky had with a full and complete breakdown. So in many ways, a lot of the supports that we provide are very similar. And in areas where we don't have in-house expertise, we do have strong referral networks and can certainly connect you with partners across our consortium membership, or with other individuals that we work closely with and have experience kind of vetting their products and the quality of their work. So there's a wide range of things that can be done through our advising and technical assistance. So if there's something on the screen that you're not quite clear about, or you have a need that is absent from this slide, you're welcome to ask a question about that or get in touch after the conversation, and we can kind of dig into what it is that might be your particular area of interest. Let's go ahead. All right. So MCCD has a number of loans and options for individuals. You are probably most interested in our shared ownership loan funds. So we'll spend some time talking about that. All of our team members that are business advisors are also loan officers. So oftentimes these are folks that are providing both the kind of customized, tailored one-to-one or small group technical assistance, as well as the folks that are walking you through the underwriting process. And a part of the reason why MCCD organizes its team that way is that sometimes that handoff can be really clunky. I'm sure as you all have been navigating your entrepreneurial journey or your journey to kind of figuring out what type of idea you want to bring to life, you've been bounced from here to there to everywhere. And, conversations like this really help you understand, the organizations that are already working in community and can kind of have more seamless interactions and relationships with one another. So the first product that you'll see on the screen is a credit builder loan. So those are often for individuals who might be exploring kind of conventional small business or might be a member of a cooperative group that we're working with that may have a credit history that is not the credit history that they want to have going into the future. So this program is designed to connect individuals with a credit counselor who can help provide deeper financial literacy education and kind of financial coaching and navigation through repairing some of the things that may show up on a credit report to get you in a stronger, more ready position to take out a small business loan or even a personal line of credit or some personal loan. Microloans doesn't really sound micro when you see $50,000 next to it.
Yeah.
But for some of these businesses that we're working with, they don't need a ton of debt financing. Instead, they might have a need to purchase a particular type of equipment. They might need some working capital for a short period of time. They may just have a more modest need. So those loans can finance projects up to $50,000. For businesses that are kind of growing or doing some new things, again, same thing. They might be needing equipment. They might be interested in buying a commercial property or doing some leasehold improvements, and they might need a little bit more capital. Those loans can be approved up to $350,000. And then our shared ownership loan fund, this slide says up to $300, but we do have the flexibility to go higher than that depending on the project. So those things are kind of contingent upon MCCD's board approval. So in understanding capital needs that exceed $300,000, we really want to have a strong sense of what it is that you're trying to accomplish and why the need is at that level. For borrowers who cannot use traditional interest-based financing, whether it's for religious reasons, cultural or personal reasons, we also have fee-based financing. So this structure replaces interest rate financing with a one-time transparent fee. We also provide lending for individuals who file their taxes with an ITIN or an individual tax identification number. So that is a tool that allows people to make their dreams a reality without having immigration status be a barrier to access to capital. All right, we can go ahead to the next one. Okay, thank you. So again, as a nonprofit CDFI, our goal is to structure loans in ways that are both accessible and sustainable for the enterprise itself. The worst thing a person can do is kind of get themselves into a financial position that they didn't anticipate because their lender wasn't a partner in that deal, and they meet themselves with surprises. So we really want to help our borrowers make sense of what's in front of them, and if there are a number of different capital instruments coming into the deal, to kind of understand the implications of how these things affect the overall structure and the obligations for that business or enterprise over the long term. So loan terms really vary based on the type of loan. We talked a little bit about that. Interest rates for all of our loan products range between 4% and 7%, and there is some flexibility in ways in which we partner to kind of align the terms for loans. Our shared ownership loans typically come in around 4%. Loan terms are typically about 3 to 10 years, and we can offer interest-only periods to kind of ease early cash flow, especially for startup businesses. Amortization, particularly on commercial real estate, can stretch outward of 25 years, or on projects that are categorized as really high impact projects. So again, it kind of depends on the purpose and the scope of what it is that you're trying to accomplish, kind of helps shape the terms around the deal. MCCD charges a 1% loan origination fee, kind of standard across all of our lending products. And for most of our loans, we're looking to borrowers to come to that deal with about 10 to 20% equity from the borrower. There was a question in the chat talking a little bit about, how a business that is considering conversion or exploring shared ownership might best position themselves for loan readiness, and we can talk about that too. But one thing to know is that MCCD on its shared ownership lending does not require personal credit checks or personal guarantees, meaning that individuals that are a part of a group do not have to kind of personally be on the hook in the event that loan is struggling to meet its obligations. Instead, we're securing those loans with business assets. So it means that your house is not on the line, your car is not on the line, but instead we're really going to be looking at what the business's assets and inventories can help secure. So this allows our loan terms to really support the structure of cooperative businesses where ownership is collective and risk and benefits are shared. So this flexibility is intentional, and this is really a part of how we align with other cooperative lenders and make sure that capital remains accessible to folks that have some of those barriers like personal guarantees or credit checks for shared ownership businesses. Let's go ahead. So this is a little bit about the application process. We use a web-based portal. So all of the documentation and the fields that are filled out across the loan application occur online. And for folks that don't feel as though they have a lot of computer proficiency or sometimes struggle to navigate online portals or primarily use their phone for getting online, we are routinely in the office, and we invite potential borrowers or clients to come into our space and sit side by side with us while we help support you through the loan application process. So in meeting with your advisor, and when we get to a place where we've determined that, you know, a financing application is the best next step, you'll receive an invitation to that web portal from your advisor, and it kind of collects application information in that first phase. A lot of the information that is provided in the first phase will help us determine whether or not you're actually ready to go into a deeper level of underwriting and document collection. Oftentimes we're exploring the information that's collected in phase 2 in conversation, or we're sharing documents already. So there are typically no surprises that stop or interrupt an application process once it's underway. Typically those are things that we're having conversations about before we move to that stage. And then once the documents are collected, your business advisor and underwriter are really examining those things and having some conversations with you to ask a wide range of questions. I loved how Vicky's slide kind of talked a little bit about the kind of the C's of credit. And I'm happy to get into more of that later when we get into the panel conversation. But there are some different things that we're looking for in applications for shared ownership borrowers. And we'll talk to you about that in a little bit more detail. But it is really kind of a 3-phase application process where when we get to the decision phase, you'll understand if it is kind of a decision outright, approved by our internal and external loan committee, or if it is a decision that has some contingencies where there are some additional things that a borrower might need to do in order to make the funding available. Or if a declination is more appropriate at that time, we'll give you some guidance about why that was the case and what needs to happen so that we can move a decision into a yes posture, even if there's a short-term delay. Move ahead. Okay, and then that's how you find MCCD.
Thank you, Electra. And thank you for answering the questions in the chat, and we'll get into that a little bit more. I think up next we have Roderick.
Hey, everybody.
Title slide.
It's an honor to be here. And I'm going to talk about the CDFI that I work for, which is Shared Capital Cooperative. Next slide, please. So Shared Capital Cooperative is a CDFI that's a community-driven financial institution that has been around for 45 plus years. I live in St. Paul, Minnesota, and Shared Capital was started here kind of at the height of that. I think it was the third wave of food co-ops in the late 60s, early 70s, when several stores in the Twin Cities couldn't get traditional loans. And so they pooled their resources and would give one another microloans. And we've just kind of grown and grown from there. So now we operate nationally. We have over 330 members and over 100 current borrowers. We've financed over 1,000 projects. We have around 23 million in assets, and 40% of that comes from capital that was invested from our members. And I'll talk about membership in a second. But that is really one of the things that makes our CDFI unique, is that we are one of the only. I don't know if we're the only. I don't want to make that claim here on recording, but we're one of the only CDFIs that work exclusively with co-ops and are a co-op ourselves. So in order to borrow from us or invest with us, which are kind of the two main financial mechanisms that you can interact with us, you have to become a member. And like any other co-op, that gives you a vote to elect our board of directors, to run for our board of directors, and to access our services and benefit from our services. Next slide, please. That's a map. I think it's a little bit dated, but it kind of shows you where a number of our projects are located. Those yellow ones represent sort of hubs where we have a number of projects concentrated in a certain area. As typically happens, once we've financed a deal or two in a community, word gets around that we're a good lender to work with if you're a co-op. We're well known throughout the CDFI landscape, as well as specifically the co-op network. And so we tend to get more and more inquiries from those areas where we've supported a number of projects. But I'm excited. I would love to see projects pop up in any of the blank spaces you see on this map, because I often get a chance to site visit and go check out these places. Next slide, please. And because I want co-ops to take over the world. I should have mentioned that when I started.
Yes.
Yes. So these are on the left, you've got kind of where our lending capital comes from. Let's see, some of it's from foundations that have an impact achievement they're trying to create with their dollars. A big chunk of it comes from cooperatives. There are individual members and trusts. There are religious groups, governments, and the CDFI fund are all sources of capital. And there on the right, you see where those dollars are being invested, where our loans are going to. And so right now, the bulk of them are worker-owned co-ops. That's around 35%. Housing co-ops makes up the next 32%. And then consumer grocery store co-ops is just under 20%. With the remainder being made up of producer co-ops, hybrid co-ops that might have multiple membership groups, and sort of one-off scenarios. Next slide, please. So lending to co-ops is unique in that co-op autonomy and independence is super important to us and is part of the cooperative principles. So capital raised by the co-op should not impair or undermine the cooperative structure, including, and I would say especially, controlled by its members. Next slide. I'm gonna put in a chat a link to the co-op principles as defined by the International Cooperative Alliance, who has announced, and at the UN, we're celebrating the International Year of the Co-op, because these principles are kind of the guiding principles of any cooperative entity. These are the four that we've kind of pulled out that are specifically around capital. But it talks about democratic member control. We often hear the phrase one member, one vote. So every member in a co-op should have equal voting power, as opposed to a company where you might have shareholders who have a greater vote because they own a larger portion of the business. Member economic participation. This is typically seen in the member equity buy-in amount. So to become a member of a co-op, there should be some financial transaction. That equity amount is determined by the co-op, and there are a lot of different ways to do that. Autonomy and independence, which I talked about, and then cooperation among cooperatives. Next slide. So this is a slide that we use to kind of show, on one level, sort of the complexity of where co-ops might find capital to support their project. And it kind of goes on a scale with equity on the left and debt on the right. The farther you are on the left is going to be your more patient, forgiving, or perhaps free forms of financing. That's where you're going to find grants, crowdfunding, donations, perhaps there's public subsidy. And on the right is going to be the most restrictive forms of capital. So that's where you're going to find your loans, your lines of credit from CDFIs, banks, credit unions, things of that nature. But there is kind of a spectrum, and it's important to think about as you're creating your, what we call your capital stack, all the different sources of capital you're going to need to get your project complete. Next slide. There are some unique aspects to lending to cooperatives or to running cooperatives in general. One is around ownership. And so thinking about how does someone become an owner? What are their rights, responsibilities? What are the benefits that they receive? Next slide. Governance. We ask for our borrowers to send us their bylaws or operating agreement. We want to make sure that there are clear, established policies around how decisions are made, who's going to represent the co-op. Often co-ops do use a democratic representative model where there's a board of directors elected to kind of make big decisions about the co-op. And what is the relationship between members, the board, and management? Next slide. And equity and patronage. So in a co-op is created to meet the needs of the community or their membership, and provide benefit to them. And so if the business has a successful year and has profit, that profit can be distributed to its members. Often there's a decision-making process that would take place, but that's called patronage dividend. And that's something we want to make sure that the co-op has thought through. Next slide. And here are kind of the main documents we ask for applications. At the bottom there, it says, and more may be asked of you. I would say more will definitely be asked of you. But these are kind of your high level, what we need to get started. And so the first one is your articles and bylaws or your operating agreement. The second one is a business plan. The third one is financial projections for the next 3 years. And then if you're an existing business, so if we're looking at a conversion or you're an existing co-op that's looking for additional financing, we'd like to see financial statements for the last 3 years, income statements, balance sheets. We'd like to see recent tax statements, tax returns, things of that nature. I'm going to pause here and I'm going to kind of talk about one of the questions that was posed to us before joining this panel, which is around our approach. I would say that in my time working with Shared Capital, the most important thing that I've learned is that these relationships are based on trust. There is trust going both ways, right? So we trust that our borrowers will be able to repay the loan. We also trust that our borrowers will let us know if they're experiencing any challenges. And on the flip side, our borrowers trust that we're making sure the terms and the structure of the loan are going to be affordable to them, are going to be within what they can afford. And they trust that when they come to us with problems, that we'll work with them to find creative solutions and problem solve. My approach personally, but I believe this can be said for any loan officer with Shared Capital, is about transparency, support, and education. I know that the financial world and the language that we use can be intimidating to some or unknown to others. And so really wanted to be able to be a source of support, a source of education in helping them understand all the details. So I always try to pause and ask people if they understand what I'm saying, repeat it back to them. And I'm going to be transparent as well. So if I'm looking at a loan application and I see something that's going to be a cause for concern, I'd rather let them know early and upfront and honestly have a conversation about that, rather than wait and just issue a decline. Our goal is to always be able to get an application to approval. And if I have any issues or concerns, I'm trying to raise them with our applicants at the earliest stage possible to give them time to consider that, maybe respond to it, maybe address the concern. And sometimes that might mean slowing down the timeline. But again, if it gives them a better chance of success, I think it's worth it in the end. The criteria that we have for becoming a member or receiving a loan is that you must be a co-op, you must have at least 3 members, and those are the big ones. Yeah. So that's about it. I'm going to stop there and look forward to any questions you might have. Thanks.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful, really informative, and you kind of went through some of the key aspects of being a cooperative for folks that are just joining us today. So I had some questions for you all. I don't know if we have any questions in the chat. I'll just check. there, I can't see the chat when I'm presenting. But one of the questions I think for folks that are new to this, and any one of you can answer, but what exactly is a CDFI, and what are the benefits of working with a CDFI versus working with a traditional bank?
Well, I'm unmuted, so maybe I'll start.
Yeah.
So CDFIs were kind of born out of kind of like social movements that acknowledged that there were some people that could get their needs met while others could not. And some people, when they were interacting with these kind of conventional, traditional commercial banking systems, were able to get access to a lot of information. They were kind of treated with an implied respect, where other folks were diminished in those interactions and not afforded as much information about the kind of full spectrum of the ways that those lending institutions could support them, or depository institutions could support them. So CDFIs kind of came out of a need, similar to the ways that cooperatives often emerge, is that there is an unmet need in the marketplace that creates gaps, challenges, and constraints for other folks. So all of us work for organizations that kind of intervene in the ways in which people are kind of kept out from getting access to information, access to capital, and the financial instruments that they need in order to achieve what it is that they're trying to achieve. So oftentimes these are lending organizations that are also offering below market rate financing. So sometimes you might go to a bank and the interest rates that they're proposing are quite high and feel a little bit out of reach. Where if you're working with a community-based lender or a mission-based lender, you might find more hospitable terms, more flexibility, more patience. And just like Roderick, Vicky, and I described earlier, is that we want to be in relationship with folks. So those are some of the biggest distinctions, is that this is not kind of a one-off sign here, here's your money, see you later. But this is, we're here to kind of walk with you through the whole process.
Yeah. And just to chime in really quick, so Community Development Financial Institution, that's what CDFI stands for. And really, I mean, like Electra said it greatly, it really was born because of the disinvested communities across all over to help those that are underserved and can't get traditional financing.
Wonderful. Yep. So there is a question in the chat around considerations for existing businesses, and I want to kind of tie that to if I'm a conversion or a cooperative looking for a loan, when should I approach you, right? What's the right time to start the application or start the relationship? Yeah.
I always say the earlier the better. We like to be involved at the earliest opportunity. We might tell you that, you need to do X, Y, and Z, and we'll come back and talk to you in 6 months' time. But at least if you come too late, we might have missed an opportunity to provide you with really solid advice, direction towards improved resources to help your application be more successful, to help you avoid certain pitfalls. One of the things I was sort of going to say in relation to that last question is that as CDFIs, we really want to see small business, independently owned businesses succeed. And so if we get an inquiry that's not a good fit for Shared Capital, I'm going to steer them to MCCD or Nexus or somebody else in the CDFI network that I think would be a better fit. Additionally, I might hear of grant opportunities or training opportunities or free webinars. I'm going to send them to people, even if they're not members of ours, if they're somebody that I've had contact with, because there are so many pitfalls that can happen. And our goal is to help you avoid as many of those as possible.
Mm-hmm.
That said, our like once we actually get an application submitted, our underwriting process at Shared Capital typically takes around 8 weeks, and then closing can take another 4 to 6 weeks. So do kind of give yourself at least that 3 to 4 month window from applying to getting
Mhm.
funds. And that's kind of on like you have all your T's and I's dotted when you send in your application. Thanks.
Okay, we have a hand up, Ms. Shawn. You can feel free to come off mute.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Thank you for your presentations. I appreciate it. I asked the question about existing business conversion to a cooperative, and I think just to expand on that question, I'm currently trying to, in the initial planning steps of working out what it would look like to convert an existing hospitality business. And so that's a bed and breakfast and then also an event venue. And so my question is, and this may also be a structure question, is what are the considerations for asset dependent businesses like hospitality? And so should the asset ownership and operating businesses be separate? And then how does that affect options for commercial real estate financing? Like that then the operating businesses depend on. So like whether it's all in one or separate, whether you have, the bed and breakfast as its own like business and then events and then whatever else happens on that same with that same property and assets, how does that affect potential financing?
You got a lot in there.
I know, I'm sorry.
No,
This is a complex process that I'm
It's a
trying
good
to
question.
think through. Yeah, and
course.
I was super excited to learn about this meeting because this is exactly what I've been trying to work through over the past couple of weeks. And I'm like, man, this is hard. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, without asking you to kind of divulge some sensitive details about the nature of your business, one of the things that, I think elaborates on kind of the point that Roderick made about getting in touch with lenders and technical assistance providers early on is that we can really dig into some of the key questions that you have. We can take a look at some of your kind of existing operating, whether that's the methodology, whether that's the structure of your existing finances, whether that's understanding your inventory or how seasonality affects your business, and help kind of really understand where it is that you're trying to get to. Oftentimes people, when they're thinking about kind of what comes next for my business, their business might be on a growth horizon. It might be in a kind of stabilization posture where there might be some supports that they need before they're able to kind of see their way into like their next step. And those conversations that you have with supportive partners in the entrepreneurial ecosystem can really kind of get into some of that. So, I apologize if that doesn't entirely answer your question, but from where I sit, like there was a lot there. And, we'd kind of want to understand a little bit more about what it is that you're asking.
And so
And just to chime in, sorry, is really, early on the better. So then that way we can help you with the free resources that there is, especially with legal. I think legal is a big key factor in making sure that that structure piece is really laid out and that you understand it.
And so it's okay to approach you all, even not as a cooperative yet? Okay, got it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, like all of our organizations work very closely together. And if there is a question that any one of us could not answer, we've got a lot of supportive friends that can help track down the answers that you need. So that's exactly what we mean when we say meet you where you're at.
And I would just say a couple of other things to really think about is having a evaluation done, to get a real sense of what is the real value of this business. I think oftentimes selling owners, even if it's very amicable, might have an inflated sense of how much their business is worth. And so you want to make sure that the co-op is getting a fair price for what they're buying. And there was one other thing that I was thinking about. Oh, you mentioned property. collateral is one of the biggest pieces that sort of decreases the risk of a loan. And so where the collateral is held will make a big impact on the financial ability of a group to take on the loan. So again, like Electra said, talk to one of us early on and we can help you think about those questions. We're not here to tell you what to do, but we can help you think through those questions and help you maybe ask or seek the support that you need to get to an answer that feels right for your group.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have recordings of our previous sessions, which go into the business planning, what the conversion process is, and we can put those in the chat if you want to go back and catch up some of those if you haven't had a chance to.
Another
Oh,
thought
go ahead. Yeah.
sorry. What is you all's perspective on crowdfunding as a capital source? Because based on my initial research, some lenders will not allow you to use that as an equity injection and instead would like consider that as deferred capital. And so how do you all view and categorize crowdfunding funds?
I think it really kind of depends on the type of crowdfunding. So sometimes it is really just donations, and that we would definitely see as equity. There are other crowdfunding platforms where it is seen as investment, and they're expecting both to get their investment back as well as earn something on it. So in my mind, those would be the two big distinctions.
Yeah, and I would add that, we regularly see borrowers that come to us that have a number of different tools that are a part of their capital strategy. And one of the things that's really important for borrowers in your conversations with lenders is having a clarity around why you're pursuing any particular strategy and kind of what is the value that it brings into what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So some folks, are often really focused on seeking grants, and grants are wonderful. I think that it is fantastic to be able to get support in that way. But, if there is an over-reliance on one type of capital instrument, it kind of opens up some questions about, maybe there's some education that this, borrower group needs about some other options, some other strategies, and some ways in which to kind of spread out the ways in which either equity or investment capital are coming into a project in a way that really makes sense and kind of surfaces some of the risks around those things.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Michonne. And if you have more questions, you can feel free to reach out to any of these folks. There was one question here, which is, what is the best first step to reach out to each of your organizations? How do we get in contact with you?
Yeah, you can share our slides and our information. Yeah, I'm more than happy. And like I said, we'll have that conversation. And if it doesn't fit something within NDC, Neighborhood Development Center, we will always reach out to MCCD or to Roderick. So yeah, at Shared Ownership, yeah.
Yeah, we have an intake form or an inquiry form on our website under our Shared Ownership Program section. So if you're feeling confident or you're ready to kind of dive headfirst into kind of a client advisor relationship, an intake form is most appropriate. But we can also engage with community through an inquiry form where it collects some basic information about who you are, what it is that you're trying to do, what you think your needs are, and kind of where your business is located, some kind of details of that nature that help us prepare for an initial consultation conversation with you. And those conversations don't have to be super intense, and they also don't have to be super long. It can be something that kind of fits what it is that you're looking for. And if that's a 30-minute conversation, if that's an hour-long conversation, if it's in person, if it's virtual, it helps us understand, who you are and where you want to begin. But that's how you would reach MCCD, is filling out an inquiry or an intake form on our website.
Yeah, similarly for Shared Capital, we've got a couple options on our website. We've got office hours on Monday afternoons where you can schedule with, you can look at our available calendar and schedule yourself in there. You'll meet with one of our loan officers, or you can fill out an inquiry form and we'll make sure a loan officer reaches out to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I have a couple more slides to go through, but I want to thank our speakers. Thank you for being here today. This was great. These are people that we work with on a regular basis, so really felt like we were just friends hanging out, talking about what we like to talk about, money. Hopefully, you gained something from today's conversation. This webinar is being brought to you by the Local Fund for Shared Ownership. It is a fund being managed by Nexus Community Partners, and there's $2.5 million to support work-owned cooperatives here in St. Paul. If you'd like to learn more about eligibility, please fill out our inquiry form. We'll get in contact with you, same as you've heard. We do free consultations to understand your situation, what you're needing, whether you're a conversion or a startup or an existing cooperative. We can work with you throughout the process and get you in contact with one of these fabulous lenders when you're ready. And our next webinar is next week. It'll go into details about the local fund eligibility, how to apply. This has been a great run for us. We hope that you've been able to visit more than one of these webinars. If you have not, we did put in the chat the link to the previous webinars. We'll be sharing this presentation along with the recording in about a week and a half, 2 weeks. And thank you all for being present today. We look forward to seeing you again next week. And yeah, we hope you have a good day.